Welcome, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Dan Lazat. I'm the director of the Rotman Institute of Philosophy, and this is our fall lecture series. Just briefly, the Rotman Institute is a philosophy institute that supports scholarship that focuses on philosophy in conversation with other disciplines. Pardon me. And it's really been a privilege to be able to gather these wonderful speakers that we have for this year's lecture series to bring all different kinds of dialogue between philosophical ideas and ideas around our theme of research for the public good. We're very pleased tonight to welcome my colleague and friend, Dr. Cheryl Currie. She is professor of epidemiology and biostatistics, and she is director of the Interfaculty Program in public health, where I also teach, so we've known each other for a while now. And I know that she is deeply interested in this topic. Her research and teaching focus on how science can better serve communities with integrity, openness, and impact. So that's the official introduction, but it leaves out a lot. Cheryl has incredible experience in thinking about this. She has worked in government very deeply and extensively in different jurisdictions. And before coming to Western just last year, depending on how you count, she worked at University of Lethbridge and was really instrumental in directing the health sciences broadly construed programming there. I mean, I think the impact that she's had at the previous places she's been, and very fortunately for us here at Western, has been really outstanding. And I'm really grateful that you agreed to join us. So thank you so much for coming. Take it away.
Thank you. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here. If people can hear me, yes? It's a pleasure to be here and to be in this such an interesting space to have this talk outside of a typical classroom. So to talk about this idea of research as a public good. So when we think of human knowledge, so before we talk about research, let's just think about human knowledge. What is the purpose of human knowledge? As your eyes adjust to the darkness of this screen, what is the purpose? What would you say is the purpose? Why are we working so hard to create human knowledge? What does it do for us? You didn't know you'd be talking this quickly. Survival. Yes. Do you want to say more about that? Survival?
What I've done?
Or just, so this idea that we have human knowledge for our survival. It's not on?
It's not on, but we will fix it.
Okay. So that's important, yes. We sort of are walking around in darkness in a way, aren't we? We're living our lives. We're sort of on an open sea. Oh, yes, I hear a difference. We're on an open sea. In some ways, we're in a sort of a darkness. And so we use human knowledge to guide our way, right? We're really limited by our five senses. It's hard for us to see beyond our five senses. So we create human knowledge, we create instruments to try to see beyond them. But as humans, we're limited. And so we create human knowledge to help guide our way. And so we can think of a lighthouse as representing human knowledge, sending out beams of light to help us in the darkness, to help us on the sea, so we can navigate in the darkness that we live in some ways. So a lighthouse is a good way to think about the public good because it's a typical example we use to explain what the public good is. So for something to represent a public good, it really has to meet two criteria. It needs to be that no one is excluded from using this good. It's available to everyone. And the second thing is that it has to be undiminished by use. So what that means is no matter how much you use the lighthouse light, you're out on the sea in the darkness navigating your life, but no matter how much you use that light, it doesn't take away from anyone else's ability to use the light as well. So a public good has to be undiminished by use. So when we think of the lighthouse representing knowledge, the accumulation of human knowledge, well, actually, before I'll say that, I'll just give some other examples. So clean air would be an example of a public good, or public parks that we don't have to pay for, so maybe not Kamoka, but public parks we don't have to pay for would be another example of a public good. some types of public infrastructure also is a public good. So I'm born and raised in Winnipeg. Not that many that I usually meet any other Winnipeggers. Anyone else from Winnipeg here? It's not that common. But I was born and raised in Winnipeg, and before I was born, there was a terrible flood in Winnipeg. And people have memories, my parents have memories of, canoeing down your street. It was a terrible, terrible flood. And what came from that is a public good. What Winnipeg did is they built a huge, well, they call it sort of a ditch, but it is not a ditch. It is a huge ring all around the city, very, very deep, so deep that they built a ski hill on it. That's how deep this ring is around the city. So that if another flood like this 1950s flood ever comes again, everyone in Winnipeg would be protected. Now, in the 50s and the 60s, when they were building this, everyone complained about how much it was costing. But when I was a child in Winnipeg, another flood came. Decades later, there was another terrible flood, but I didn't get to canoe down my street. And I didn't get to because of that public good, that public infrastructure that was built, that benefited everyone in the city. So that's another example. So when we're thinking of human knowledge as a public good, I would argue that it meets these qualifications. It's available for everyone to use. And no matter how much you use human knowledge, it's not diminished by your use. So I would argue it meets these qualifications. But where does the light come from? So when we're thinking of human knowledge as a public good, what is fueling the light in that lighthouse? Where does that come from? So what is the fire that creates that light that fuels the lighthouse? Yes? Research is one. So you're ahead of me. I love that. So research is definitely one, and that's the purpose of today's talk. Now let's think about thousands of years ago, even hundreds of years ago, before we thought about the scientific method, what was fueling human knowledge then? Before we had the scientific method, what fueled human knowledge that created that light to guide us? What would it have been? Communications, yeah, good. So people talking to each other about
what they know or what they have learned.
And what they've learned, what they've experienced, yeah. Passions. People, do you want to say more?
A desire and wanting to learn and understand the world.
Mm-hmm.
A drive I suppose.
To understand, a drive to understand. Very nice, yes. Yeah. Now, when we think of this desire to understand the world, does our human knowledge, all that we've created, even to date, represent the ultimate truth? Does it represent the ultimate truth, the ultimate, complete truth of what's really out there? If we think of the lighthouse, when we think of the accumulation of human knowledge, is it equal to the sun? Or is human knowledge still, we're sort of in the lighthouse, right? We're in the lighthouse, we're in the darkness, we're sending out our light beams of where we think the world goes, but we only have 5 senses. We are missing some senses, I'm sure, that we don't know about. So if you think of an earthworm doesn't have eyesight. Try explaining the sense of eyesight to a worm. It would never believe you that it's real, because it's not a sense that it has. And so humans, we're limited by the senses we have and what we can see. So we can't see from a philosophical perspective, but I would say even from a practical perspective, we can't see the world in its ultimate reality. We are in the lighthouse, and we can see what our senses allow us to see. So we're limited. So before we had the scientific method, before we had research, we were driven by passion. We were driven our knowledge by talking to one another about our personal experiences of life and that of our ancestors, our mythologies, our religions, our cultural beliefs. We're really driving that light in the lighthouse. But now, when we think about the world today, most countries, most governments around the world define themselves as secular. The word secular simply means of this world. not of a supposed spiritual realm, but of this world that we can see with the five senses. Why do you think so many countries have moved away from mythologies or belief systems to a secular society? Why have so many countries done this? Yeah.
It's easier to create a cosmopolitan society when you're not arguing over religious ideological differences. Exactly. Because when we are talking about our beliefs of our ancestors, whether we call that religion, whether we call that a cultural belief, when we hear people arguing, are they arguing from the perspective of the Lighthouse? Or are they arguing from the perspective that they know the ultimate truth? A lot of these older belief systems, we're not arguing that, well, this might be how it is. It was, this is how it is. And then we see war, and then we see arguing, and it makes things difficult. So the scientific method has come along, and it also acts like a flame when we think about human knowledge. And of course, it needs a lot of ammunition, it needs money, it needs infrastructure, it needs data. I'm an epidemiologist, so I'm always talking about, data and how do we analyze data. It needs labor. We need students to be trained to do this work. So it's expensive. But what's nice about the scientific method is it never claims to know the ultimate truth. We try, and we teach students as well, we talk about the counterfactual ideal, that we don't know an ultimate truth. We're simply trying to approximate an ultimate truth. And so we have to always question what we find. What is, we just have these five senses, and we're always questioning our data. And this can feel frustrating to the public, because what they see is, well, you said alcohol was bad for us, and now you're saying it's good for us, and now you're saying it's bad for us again. Well, what is the truth? What is the ultimate truth? That's often what the public wants to know. But we can't give that to the public because we don't represent the ultimate truth. And we make it clear that that's not what we're trying to represent when we train people in the scientific method. So it's a different way of thinking about the world. So when we think of research, who is tending this flame? Who is doing research in Canada? There's three main groups doing the research, represented by this pie chart. Who do you think is the largest part of the pie chart? Let's hear some guesses. Who's the biggest piece? Corporations. Wow, this is a smart audience. Yeah, so it is industry. The largest piece of the pie who is producing research is industry. What about the second piece? Who is that? Exactly. Wow. This is a smart group. So universities and colleges are producing. And then what about that little sliver? Who's that? Government and NGOs. So those two groups together are producing a very small percent. So as Dan mentioned, I used to work in government, and I was responsible for helping create knowledge in government and then also translating research. I wrote a lot of briefing notes in my time, and we worked under a health minister, and we were trying to translate other people's research as well as produce our own knowledge. So this is who's we would say is tending the flame in Canada, producing human knowledge. It's a little different in the United States. Industry is taking up a bigger piece of the pie. Academics have a smaller piece in the United States. So let's think first about industry. Is the research produced, the majority of research is produced by industry, is it a public good? So remember our criteria. So the first we want to think is, before we answer the question, is research a public good? We have to ask ourselves, who's producing this research that we're talking about? So let's start with industry. And remember our criteria. The research knowledge has to be not diminished by use, and it has to be available to everyone. Now, I would argue we're meeting the first criteria. Once knowledge is produced, no matter how much, once you have access to it, no matter how many times you read a scientific paper, it's not diminishing. I mean, I guess you could get your fingerprints all over it and make it hard to read, but for the most part, it's staying put. But when we're thinking of industry-based research, It's this second point I wonder about. Is it available to everyone? Because it can't be a public good if it's not. Now, I chair an ethics board in Canada. For one of the provinces in Canada, I serve as the chair of an ethics board, a research ethics board. And I also serve as a statistician on a second health research ethics board. So I get to see a lot of industry research. Literally every month, I'm reading a proposal from industry. I'm in the field of health, so I'm reading clinical trials produced by pharmaceutical companies. It is great work, but wow, it is complex. One proposal is 300 pages long from a drug company, and they are really following the scientific method. It's extremely rigorous, but it would be so hard for the average person to read. It's very, very complex because they haven't made it for you. They haven't made it for us. They've made it because they have regulatory loops they're trying to jump through, and it has to follow a very strict line with Health Canada, and that's what they're doing. So it's very difficult to read. For something to be a public good, you can't just have access to it. You need to be able to digest it. If you can get access to it, but it's unreadable to the average person, we don't classify that as a public good. So it doesn't cross that bar. The other issue, is research produced by industry available to everyone? So here we got a ship. One in the corner is already sinking. Oh, you can't see it. There's one sinking, and this one looks like it needs some light. But the lighthouse is turned off. They didn't pay. No light for you, right? So with industry research, I have to sign a lot of confidentiality agreements to see the industry-sponsored research I see, so to decide if they get ethics approval for their studies. But it's very few people seeing that data. Now, industry does publish some of its research, but not all of it. Some of it is hidden. Of course, there's patents. And so I would argue that you often, if you want to benefit from the knowledge produced by some industry, not all, but some, you've got to pay the money because they've spent $10 million on the clinical trial and they need to get their money back. So they're going to not share the light that was created from that science with the world. They've just spent $10 million, they're out $10 million. We can see it from their perspective, right? They're out $10 million. How are they going to recoup that money? Of course, by selling the drug that has shown to help this outcome. They need to make their money back. So it's not judgmental. It makes sense. And some of this research is so expensive. I wonder without industry if some of our medical breakthroughs would even happen. It is important. They play an important role in our society. But is the research they produce consistently a public good? I would say it depends. If you pay the money, the light shines, right? So I would argue that most of the research being done in Canada, as we can see, is, well, it's research and development, is being produced by industry, and it would be some of it's a public good, but some of it's a private good because it costs money to get access to it. Or even if you paid, you wouldn't be able to get access. It's just industry secrets. Okay, and then the other thing we have to think about is a public good should actually be good, right? So here's a cigarette ad produced by industry in the 1950s. This is a real ad. Are they saying cigarettes are bad, are good for you? Are they saying cigarettes are good for you? Maybe we'll start with that question. Does the ad say cigarettes are good for you? Are they making such an extreme claim? No. What is the purpose of this ad that they paid a lot of money to run in many magazines in the night? What are they trying to get the public to think then? They're not saying cigarettes are good for you. So what's the purpose of paying all the money for the ad? What's the ad want you to think?
That science approves tobacco?
Yeah. And who are they saying is doing the science?
I guess smokers.
Maybe.
Do it at the microscope with that cigarette.
I'm not sure they're saying really anyone has done the research. They haven't properly narrowed down the who. They just said they.
Someone's done it.
Someone's done it. We're not going to tell you who's done it.
What's that?
What's the say from the
Well-known research organization.
Oh, yeah, from the report of a well-known research organization.
Very well known. That's what
Very
we're going to
well.
tell you about it.
Yes, but we're not going to tell you who it is, though. But very well known. Yes. Yeah. So they, this is, I see. It seems funny to us because we're in 2025, but I think a lot of the public is wondering, who are they doing the research? Who are these people doing the research? Almost like back in the 1950s. Who are these people doing the research? And there's almost this understanding that they're all the same. They're all the same people, right? I was just talking to a colleague a friend the other day, and they said, people say that they have an answer for cancer. They have a cure. They have a cure for cancer, but they'll never tell us because they're making too much money on cancer. Who's they? Who are these people that have this cure? So it's this kind of ambiguous idea, right, that the public is thinking about, but it's hard to kind of get a grasp on. And if we think this would never happen today. But of course, it is happening today. We know it's happening today. This idea that you have to drink wine every day. It's so good for your health. You can't get these vitamins any other way. How long was that message circulating in Canada? That drinking wine is good for you. Drinking alcohol at least a little bit per day is very good for your health. How long was that circulating? Just people still believe that. It was going around for a long time in Canada that this was true. Of course, I was at academic conferences in the early 2000s where we were speaking to one another saying, this research is all funded by alcohol industry saying alcohol is good for your health, right? Once starting in the 2010s, 2015s, we started saying, who's funding this research saying you must drink wine every day? And once we took the dollars away and said it can't be funded by alcohol to say these messages, all of a sudden the science turned. And now it's very clear there's a dose-response relationship. There is no safe level of alcohol consumption for your health. Every glass can increase your risk of cancer, heart disease, digestive problems, many things. And so this was well funded. All of these messaging and the research itself was being funded by the alcohol industry. And maybe some of you are sad to hear that. But I would recommend this article if you really want to read about this article in the American Journal of Public Health talking about the influence they were having and trying to kind of strong-arm researchers into saying moderate alcohol consumption, please keep drinking our product, is very good for you. And so we don't say that anymore in the field of public health because it's not true.
So who proved that it wasn't true?
Yeah, who are they? Yeah.
Who is they who proved it wasn't true?
Yeah, so that's such a good question. So it's the body of scientific knowledge. So hundreds of studies have been done, more than hundreds. And then what we do, and I'm going to be talking about this in a few minutes, it's called a systematic review. So systematic reviews take all of this evidence from researchers all across the world, different samples, different populations, and they try to see if there's a signal. Maybe there's no signal. We're not sure. Sometimes it's we don't know. But the signal that alcohol is harmful to your health, even at very low levels. No, it's a minimum harm at low levels. It's increasing in a dose-response way, but still it is having a negative effect on us. That signal is now very strong across many studies. So when you say they, it would be thousands of researchers. Yeah. I'm going to talk about systematic reviews in a few minutes because they are important, so I'm glad you said that. Okay, so I think the message I'm trying to say here is the light can shine, the human knowledge can shine, but as consumers of research, we have to remember it's not always trying to guide us to our best health. Sometimes it's guiding us into rocks that people know are rocks. So we have to be critical consumers. Not all research is produced for our public good either, right? It's some research, not all, is produced to make money. So we have to think that way. It's more nuanced. Now let's go back to this slide because I'm an academic researcher. So what I really want to talk about is academic research. I can't do anything about industry, but is academic research, this other 35%, is that a public good? Well, there's some problems here too. The first problem is it's just as technical as the industrial, maybe more so. The industry's research and academic research can be very technical, very hard to read. So this is an issue that we have to address. But I am excited about the progress I see. And one of the big things that's really helping, in my opinion, as you might guess, is AI. Because what AI can do is you can take a lot of articles now are open access. So when I started as an academic, all scientific articles were behind paywalls. Very hard to get access to them. But now we reward researchers who spend the $3,500, $4,500, $50, I don't know if there's other, what's the highest you've ever spent to make your article open access? I think the highest I've gone is $5,000. Anyone higher? $6,000? These are, some of the journals are charging $11,000 to make your article open access. Now, we have to write our grants and get that money so that we can make our articles open access. But we are motivated to do so, to write the grants, to make sure our articles, anyone can read them, which is an important step, and that's only happened in the past 2 decades. Now, a lot of the research, you just go on Google Scholar, you can find research open access on almost any topic you might be interested in. Some will still be behind paywalls, but there's enough of a signal that you can read it and that you don't have to pay $35 to get access to the article. So that's good. But still, you get access, you don't know what it means. So this is where I think AI is great. Now, it's a human-based thing. It is not, so it's fallible. AI is not perfect. It makes mistakes because it's based on humans made it. So we shouldn't expect things to be perfect that we make, right? And AI is no exception. But it does a great job. What I like about AI tools is, let's say you have a relative with cancer. They have breast cancer, and you want to understand, it's your aunt. She wants your help in understanding the literature. Her doctor is suggesting treatment. She wants to read what the science says. So she wants your help to do that. Well, you can start with the articles, finding some articles on cancer treatment, but you can put them into AI and ask it to explain it to you. And if you say, oh, okay, you're already above my head. I actually don't know the difference between a nucleus in the cell and a mitochondria in the cell. Could you first explain that? So you can ask AI to back up many steps as you need to back up so that you can follow along. We've never really had that in human history, where you can take something really complex and then ask this machine to say, I still don't understand. You need to you need to start with me back here and then slowly move up. I think that is a way that people can get through scientific articles now, slowly read an article and ask AI questions. So here's an example of a systematic review of many, many, many studies on the very best treatments for breast cancer. But it's already using words in the title that are hard to understand. But what journals are doing now is they are actually have definitions right in the articles. This is new. So what you can say, see how those words are underlined? This is very new. Academic journals are really trying. So you can click these buttons and it'll give you a definition. So it's, we don't know what this word means. Well, here's what it means. And then you can continue on with reading the article and you don't get hung up by, well, if I don't even know what the words in the title mean, how am I supposed to understand this article? I really see science, academic research at least, making a strong effort to help people get the articles and then be able to read them. And then I would still encourage using AI to do it. So for example, one thing I found this summer that I absolutely love is you can take the most complex scientific article and put it into an AI system. This is the one I use, and it'll make a podcast for you. And so you've tried it. Do you want to say what it's like?
Sure. So,
She's a student in my class. So,
if you're someone who really likes to listen to podcasts, like I think they're very helpful because it's kind of like someone speaking to you, and you can do it anywhere, like while you're walking home or anything. So Dr. Currie kind of puts the Epi lectures through these, and so we can just put it on, and within like 20 minutes, they kind of summarize the Epi lecture, and it's kind of like someone's giving you a prep course, I guess, but they're talking to you. So
Yeah.
It's very convenient.
yeah, so like we have a thick, article I want the class to read. It's very complex, full of statistics and zeros. I put it through this thing, and then it makes a 20-minute podcast with two fake people talking. That seems so real that some of my students said, how did you get literally I had students say, how did you get the money to hire the actors to make all the podcasts for your readings every week? And I said, oh yeah, but that's how real they make jokes. It's super light and fun. And yet, so before I tried this with the class, I listened to it all summer. I kept putting harder and harder articles in, like almost impossible to get through complex material. And then I would listen to the podcast to see if, as an expert, if I thought it was producing a good high-level summary of the information. And it really did. So for those of us who are audio learners, this can be a great way. Yeah?
I'm so curious. Have you put in one of your own papers?
Not yet. I was scared. I thought about it. I should. These are some of the examples I put in. So each of these is a different article for my class that I'm teaching right now that I put in. These aren't the real titles. The titles for my articles are very boring, but they make it sound fun. The art and science of epidemiology, right? They make it sound fun. And they tell jokes. Like, it's kind of amazing to me. AI is moving so fast. We always talk about AI sometimes in a negative, but I think it can really serve us too, right? So this is something that, I think is a positive news that makes research, academic research at least, more of a public good because of all of these tools that we can now use. But the second issue is, does the public trust academic research? Because when we look at the definition of a public good, it can't just be that you can access it and you can use it. You have to be motivated to use it. So if we create a public park, we spend all these tax dollars, we make a brand new park in London, but it's dirty and smelly, and we don't actually put nice things in the park, and we let all the grass die, and we never water it, and there's no trees. Is this a park people want to go to? No. And so it's not actually a public good. It's a public park, but it doesn't meet the definition of a public good because people aren't motivated to use it. Same with research. When we're thinking of academic research, people have to trust it. There's a lot of misinformation out right now. People don't know what to trust. And that's an issue as academics that we have to be thinking about. How do we help the public not only read our work and get access to it, but also that they feel they can trust the work, or trust within reason. It's not an ultimate truth, obviously, but that they can feel they should use it. Because, in my field of health, epidemiology, we always have new studies coming out. And sometimes you'll hear people say, it sort of feels like this. Every time I turn on the news, it's like you're spinning a wheel, and now this is good for you, and this is bad for you. Of course, as our science and knowledge grows, we make mistakes in science and then we correct them, like the alcohol messaging. And then we build on that. But from a public perspective, it feels messy. And so I'll tell you an example of this from my perspective. When I was a kid, we often had big family dinners. Really fun. My aunt and uncles would come, my cousins. We'd all sit around tables, and it was really fun. But my uncle was a professor of kinesiology, and he was actually the dean of kinesiology for many years. And in my family, we had several smokers. So we're outdoors. We didn't play guitar. So this, I don't know, AI made this. This is in my family. But AI thinks we didn't play guitars. It was always friendly, though.
But I would watch, when you're a child at a dinner table, you're listening. And the conversations I would hear is my uncle gently and respectfully, as a professor, trying to explain the research that smoking is bad for you. And what I would hear my relatives respond, who were older, so we need to be respectful, is, oh, well, every time I turn on the news, I hear potatoes are bad for me, and then rice is good for me. And I don't believe any of it, because it's all just made up. And that made an impression on me when I became a researcher myself, because I would hear my uncle patiently restating, no, that, smoking actually is very bad for you. And the rejection of that, again, very respectfully, but the rejection of that messaging every time we had dinner, practically. So it kind of made an impression that this idea of public mistrust of the data is something we have to be thinking about. So what we have to do is help the public and even ourselves remind ourselves what's happening to the knowledge. We produce research, but then a lot of the time up until very recently, the public is not the one interpreting it because they can't get access or they don't know how to read it. So it's being interpreted for them. So who's doing the interpretation? Of course, the academics, we're excited, right? Like, my research said this. I should put my article through that podcast. Maybe I'll be motivated to do it now. This is what my research said, and here's how it builds the science forward. We're excited, right? And then when I worked in government, it would be more grumbly. Well, this is impractical. Like, we can't even apply this in government. It's useless, It's Ivory Tower. When I first started in government, and I'm still very close with my supervisor, who was an important mentor to me in my career, because when I first started in government, she would say, you're very Ivory Tower. Everything is, rainbows, and we're going to save the world. And when we're in government, we have to make practical decisions. And it was really important for me before I became an academic to work in government and to kind of become more realistic about the world. So research is useful from a government perspective if we can apply it. And of course, we've got the industry trying to interpret the research as well. And their interpretation is, can I sell it? So all of this is filtering through and coming out the other side, and then the public is like, okay, we have this new research, and here's how it's being interpreted in that light of the, lighthouse analogy I used earlier. So from a public perspective, the light feels a bit, it's all over the place. How can I sail my ship, right? Like, where are the rocks? You're moving the lights all over the place. I can't tell where I'm supposed to go, because each source is interpreting the data, refracting that light a little bit differently. And so from a public perspective, I can imagine it must feel like mixed signals. So, like, when we think of alcohol's impacts on the body, here we are as the researchers excited, right? We're building towards something. Well, now we thought this, and now we learn this, and now we learn this, and we're building up toward, some sort of better knowledge. This is how academics tend to think. I don't know, maybe there's other academics here, just you can disagree. But that's how I tend to think. Like, how do we get excited about new discoveries, right? And then we're saying, but the ultimate truth can't be known, and we have to question everything. And to us, it all makes a lot of sense. But it does feel like maybe wishy-washy. I don't know. It might feel that way to some people, right? And then government is taking the data. So the scientific evidence is strong enough now on alcohol that the government of Canada has changed some of their messaging and really lowered the amount of alcohol it recommends people drink per week. It's not saying don't drink any, but to try to reduce the impact on the physical body, reduce the amount. So this is updated 2025, May 2020, or March 2025, last updated. So this is how government's using it. And then industry doesn't like this message, right? So it wants people to use alcohol. That's the product it's selling to you. So there's kind of, sometimes I wonder about misinformation. Who's producing the misinformation and making it so that the public can't understand. There's one other group in here that's missing. What other group is missing in my little funnel? That's who else is interpreting the data? What other group?
The media, yes, the media. I didn't think of that. So the media is missing. But they're interpreting it for us. Yeah. Yeah, so the media. And there's another big group missing here. You want to, yeah? The public themselves? Oh, yeah, so that's the ultimate where I'm going. So that's good. So you just pre-thought what I was going to say. So the public is missing big time because they should be interpreting this for themselves. But another group that's interpreting this, of course, is religious organizations, right? People who have certain cultural beliefs. They are hearing this message on alcohol and making decisions on, well, does alcohol use or not using alcohol align with our cultural beliefs? And if it does, this is a great message. And if it doesn't, maybe we're going to send out a news release that we disagree with this or we question the data. So that's another voice speaking to the public about these issues. So the patterns are very confusing. So what is a solution? I'm sure we can all think of different solutions. I'm going to give you mine. One, not the ultimate, but I think this is an exciting solution from an academic perspective. And this is what we talked about earlier with your question, systematic reviews. These are quite new. It's really only in the past 15 years that these systematic reviews have been published. I've published one myself, so this is the one we saw earlier. And then it summarizes the evidence. So I always say to students, instead of reading 50 separate studies, you can read one 10-page paper and learn the ultimate findings of 50 studies. Because every study is using the scientific method, and every study has some noise, some error. So we rise above the error by summarizing the data across many, many studies and different groups of people. And that's how we can come to an opinion on what does the science say at a higher level. So, for example, we always hear about daily steps. We should all take more steps. And what is the magic number we always hear? 10,000 steps, right? What does the scientific evidence say? Do we have to reach 10? Or is 10 not even enough? Depends who you ask. But if we look at, 50, 60, 70 studies, and we rise above all the noise of those studies, what do we find overall? So here's an example of a systematic review that did that. Now it is talking about a dose-response relationship. I mentioned that earlier. The more steps, the better. But what is the lowest threshold that we could get to feel good about it? Because it's kind of being pushed on us, right? We should buy these products so we can monitor our steps. And I'm just as guilty. I like doing this. We actually just had what we called a geo challenge at the university for our students, and we had them go all over campus looking for geotags and figuring out puzzles. And then they went all over campus, and then here they are showing us their steps. And then we had an app, and they had to you took part in this. You didn't know I was going to ask you all these questions. Was it fun?
Yeah, but a lot of walking around the campus.
And so we were worried that when the students got back, they would say, oh my God, I walked 10,000 steps in your exercise. Just your one thing. And so we said, let's get them to celebrate their steps instead. So they get points for how many steps. So you can see the groups celebrate, like this group writes, like it's hard? 11,000 steps for the exercise, right? So we can, frame it to be fun. So anyway, so what did this study find? So these systematic reviews are still long and cumbersome to read, but the nice thing is they have to be written in a way that it's easy to understand right at the beginning of the article. So here's what they found. Can you read that? Is it too small? So what did they find? Do you have to reach a magical 10,000 threshold? When we look at many, many different studies all over the world. What is the magic number?
Looks like it's 7,000.
About 7,000. Yeah. So these are really useful articles to rise above the scientific noise and to really understand patterns in the literature. So if I was someone interested in breast cancer treatment, I would take a systematic review, not just one article, but a systematic review, run that through a few different AI tools and see what I can learn from that information. That's equal to reading thousands of pages of science, but it'll be 10 pages long.
So really a big savings of time. Another interesting research that I've been following is we know dementia rates are going up, and type 2 diabetes are going up in Canada and around the world, but are they related to each other? So in 2006, there was a systematic review, and they have to be honest. We read the whole article and we judge it. And they said in 2006, we don't have enough science yet. There seems to be a biological mechanism when the brain is having trouble dealing with sugar. There seems to be starting to be a problem with the brain having problems dealing with glucose that can lead to memory problems that can lead to dementia. Seems to be a weak signal, but we don't have enough science yet to say it is. But then by 2024, another systematic review was published on all the new material since then. And they said, now we do. The science does say there is an association between people having type 2 diabetes and when they're middle-aged and their risk of developing dementia when they're in older age. That the link is quite strong and quite robust over many, many studies. So you can look at older systematic reviews and then look at the newer ones. And where do you find these? You just go to what's called Google Scholar. So instead of just going to normal Google, there's Google Flights, there's Google everything, you just go to Google Scholar. And then there you just search the words systematic review in quotes, plus whatever article you're interested in. And then you'll usually get systematic reviews that you can read, especially in the field of health. They're catching on in other fields, but health is where they really started. So there's a lot of them in health. So, we can use these different tools to try to understand science, and I think this helps make it a public good. So, thinking about this idea, okay, that's great. We can read the research. Maybe we'll trust you. I guess we could look at systematic reviews and try to see beyond all this noise. And then we can try to read the research for ourselves. But the other question, and this when I was in government was brought up frequently, are academics asking research questions that anyone cares about? I think I am, but maybe I'm not, right? Do we live in an ivory tower? What does that mean? It means that it's this kind of idea that academics are thinking, they're in their labs thinking up their research questions and they're disengaged from the public. And that they're not, when I was in government, this was a frequent criticism that the research being produced is not practical or useful for government to make decisions on, some of it. So this idea, if we are producing research and look at all our scientific papers, but the light coming from the tower is only benefiting academics, it's not shining out like a lighthouse to benefit the public, then is it a public good? I would argue it's not a public good. And so we have to, as academics, make sure the public can use our research, of course, understand it, but it has to be relevant. It should be relevant. And we do see a lot of research grants now. The government of Canada, for example, will say, here's all these research grants, but you have to answer these research questions. Not your own research questions that maybe no one cares about, but the research questions that matter to Canadians. And so again, trying to help researchers step down from the tower, and I think it's important that we do. So the last thing I want to talk about is, when we're thinking about creating knowledge and making it relevant for the public, I think one of the best things we can do is ensure that the public are partners on our studies. So this is one thing I've done throughout my career. I was lucky enough to take a master's level course back in the day on how to do community partnered research, and I just loved it. And so almost every study I've ever done in my entire career has had community members not being studied, but helping design the research questions I ask, and that they become part of a panel and they're named on the grants. And then they help me shape the research questions because I'm always worried I'm in the tower, right? I'm worried I can't see and that it's not relevant. So they help shape the questions. And I've had different community members over the years serve in this role, and it makes the research relevant. And now more and more, when we're thinking about this fire that's producing this light, this human knowledge, The fire needs to be tended by more than just industry, government, and academics. We need the public to help tend the fire with us, because that's what really makes the research relevant and usable for everyone. And of course, now this is becoming very common, having research partners with lived experience in the field you study. So I study addiction, and in my field, there's manuals that people can use. How do we engage people with lived experience of addiction in our research? So they shape the questions that we study. And then when I do this work, they help me, if I'm doing quantitative or qualitative research, they help make the surveys with me. Or how do we interview someone who is struggling with drug addiction in a respectful way? So they're looking at the questions and they're saying, this is offensive, don't ask it like this, because they have lived experience or they have relatives with lived experience. And so they're helping ensure the research is done in a good way. So there's lots of tools and of course lots of grants now for people who want to do this kind of collaborative research in partnership with community, inviting them not to be researched on, but to research with us. So it's a really important step. So in summary, if we are to reclaim research as a public good, and I'm only speaking of academic research, that's my area, I think we have to ensure that we're thinking about who's interpreting this research, that we're thinking about, who's interpreting it for the public, and can we encourage the public to interpret the research for themselves? That would be the best case scenario. We have to talk about these tools, how to use different AI tools. What is a systematic review, and how do you read one? I teach it in class, but can we teach this stuff more broadly to people? And then inviting communities as partners with us in research, I think are key ways that we can move forward and actually make academic research a public good in a more substantial way.